Welcome to Just Minded My Business Media, LLC, where you get information that you can use. I'm your host, Ida Crawford, but before we dive in, subscribe to Just Minded My Business on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Share Just Minded My Business with your family, friends, and colleagues. Engage with us by leaving a review or comment. Your support keeps this podcast going and growing. Visit our website at jmmbmediallc.com to learn how we can support you in getting more visibility on your products and services. So grab a pen and paper and get ready for information that you can use. John Hannum is a finance veteran with an entrepreneurial spirit. Over his corporate career, John held significant positions at major companies like HD Supply, Home Depot, and portfolio companies for prestigious private equity firms like Goldman Sachs and Bain Capital. He consistently guided organizations towards substantial growth, leveraging his problem-solving abilities and team-building skills. John played a pivotal role in numerous high-profile acquisitions and integrations, seamlessly merging companies ranging from $5 million to $250 million in value. Today, as the driving force behind PPS Solutions, John combines his corporate acumen with an unwavering commitment to sharing values to entrepreneurs. He is dedicated to educating business leaders and providing the financial tools necessary for substantial growth and long-term success. Wow. Welcome, John. You have been a busy person.
Thank you very much, Ida. It's great to be here. It sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But it happened so fast.
Yes. Well, let me ask you before we jump in, how did you end up on this role? How did you get into this?
In my current space, it was kind of an accident, really. I always thought that I would go, be the CFO of a company and grow that company and do something interesting with it, and then go on to do something else. And early in the pandemic, I left a company we had taken public in 2018. I left them March of 2020, kind of wrapped up the assignment and was figuring out what else to do when, the world shifted and changed, and I had a lot of free time, as did everybody, I suppose. I had no reason to say no to a smaller company that asked me to do some consulting, and they were having some management issues and normally something I wouldn't have taken, but I had no reason to say no, and I did it. And kind of a light bulb moment where I realized small companies don't have access to the same resources that big companies do. No reasonable CFO of a company of any size would have allowed some of the crazy things that were happening to happen. So it was just a kind of a pivotal moment in my life where I said, I have to fix that. I need to figure out how to do that. And I started working for that company, and then I took on a few more in my role as fractional CFO. I just did the exact same thing that I would do before, but for many companies. And then I kind of grew that into a business, and now kind of not taking on any more clients myself, but building CFOs and putting them with businesses, taking on businesses, matching them with the right CFOs, and really building a service that helps people to grow, to prosper, and to keep their business in control.
Okay, so now you train people to be CFOs, so to speak. Let me just make sure I'm clear.
I do want to emphasize one of the things I value as being a CFO and in hiring CFOs is experience. So, a calm sea never made a good captain, in my opinion. And so you need somebody that's been out and got a few battle scars in order to to really give you a good partnership. So there are a lot of people in the field that are good CPAs, good financial acumen. I'm always going to look for a CFO that's been in that chair and that's run businesses before. So.
Okay.
To me, I don't have to train them. I have to remind them that they work for more than one client. Normally in a CFO role, we would go into work during the day and we'd do all the things, and we kind of own the chair and do the accounting and do the finance and do all the into operations, all kinds of things every day, and then we'd go home. it's a little bit of a different skill set to do it for multiple clients, and kind of make that role fractional. But it's not much of a leap. You just do basically the same thing you're trained and experienced to do, but for more than one person at a time.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, let's get some vocabulary and some meanings out the way so that we have complete clarity. What is a CFO and what are their responsibilities?
Well, CFO basically runs finance.
Okay.
The C-suite, being the CEO, CFO, CMO, CRO, all kinds of C's, really represent all the functions of business. In most entrepreneurial businesses, of course, that's just a different hat for the entrepreneur to wear. They wear every hat, in sometimes at the same time. But the CFO wears the finance hat and brings the finance perspective. So as those discussions are happening at the C-suite and at the table, they're bringing the finance perspective. Have we considered this? What is it going to happen if we do that or this? They do accounting. They control the accounting function, but really only as a part of the finance hat. Analysis, financial planning and analysis, forecasting, budgeting, all those things in addition to accounting are really key to bringing that perspective. The primary function is to make better decisions and keep yourself out of risk. So that's what your CFO should do for you is help you make good financial decisions and keep you out of risk.
Okay. All right. Fractional CFO. Define that.
A CFO that does what they do for more than one client.
Okay. Easy enough. All right. Thank you so much. I like clarity because when people are listening and you're talking about these things, they know exactly what you're talking about. So, the right CFO, the right fractional CFO. How do you how does a CEO determine how to pick the right person for those?
Sure. So I think there's a few different qualifications for that. The first just being fit, right? Is the person it's kind of like choosing a doctor in a way, and it's a good analogy because you're actually going to have to talk about very real things. You don't want to go into the doctor's office and talk to a doctor that you don't trust because you're not going to give them the right information and they're not going to be able to help you with the medical problems. Same for a CFO. You're going to have very real conversations about finance with your CFO. Sometimes, mostly, in fact, most of the time, it's just the CFO and the owner, CEO, founder, whatever title they choose that are having very real conversations. So finding somebody that you can work with and that has the experience in your business to do what you want them to do is key. Fit and personality are great. You want to make sure that you have somebody that you can talk to and work with, but that they have experience. If you have a great friend who's a CFO in an industry that isn't yours, they might lead you down a wrong path because they don't understand the accounting or the finance for that industry. If you have a person who's very technically savvy and gives you great information and is superb on the analysis and numbers, but you can't talk to them, that's also a terrible fit. So you really want to make sure that they kind of click on all levels. It's a job interview, whether you're hiring a service or a person, it's really a job interview. So you want to treat that as such. You want to make sure that they fit with you culturally, industry-wise, and in all the ways that are going to make working together very easily.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the fractional CFO that supports multiple clients. Okay, I heard you say something. They definitely need to know your industry. So in the fractional world, how does that work if you're supporting multiple companies?
We match CFOs by industry with the experience that they had as CFOs in that industry. I think you can get some industry experience from being a fractional as well. So if you've serviced a certain number of clients within an industry, that kind of counts as well. Our firm right now has people that specialize in, same as my background actually, construction, manufacturing, distribution, consumer product goods, retail. I spent 17 years in the tire industry, so that's as much as I hate retail, it's in my blood a little bit. It's also service. So those are our industries where we're very comfortable. I have yet to put on anybody for things like healthcare or aerospace, film and television, which is huge here in Los Angeles. So as we have clients that would have those needs in building our business, that might be an interesting thing to do. But I would need to find someone with that experience to make sure that they understand exactly what the client is gonna need.
Okay, so in other words, you need to be knowledgeable of the industry.
I think
As you
it's key.
mentioned.
Yeah.
Yes.
In construction, as an example, in construction, you're really going to hone in on some concepts that aren't necessarily around in other spaces. WIP as a uh, an idea, work in process, right? You have construction jobs that are not done yet. You have either revenue to accrue or some accounting concepts to match that revenue and expense. And people that don't understand that get very confused about that. When even the entrepreneurs that are in that industry, we have to really work with them to understand those concepts and make sure that we're recording things in the system correctly so we can actually analyze that data. So I wouldn't want to bring somebody who hadn't been in construction accounting into a construction company as a CFO. It would just do a disservice to the client.
Absolutely. So if companies want to work with you, how do they connect with you?
Through our website primarily. It's our main booking engine for asking questions, for booking on our calendars, etc. It's super easy. It's ppsfinance.com. Um, the best way to do that is either to send an email, reach out, or book some time on our calendars to talk about your business.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wow. This is definitely, you're definitely educating me because I've heard of CFO. I think a lot of people have, but knowing the actual role that a CFO plays is a whole totally different ballgame. And if you now, what size businesses do you typically work with?
So the kind of sweet spot for not for needing finance but not having your own CFO yet is probably in the $3 or $5 million to start, 25 to $50 million on the top end. Really depends on the velocity of your business and
Mhm.
what you want to do. One of the things I say often is, the person that owns a corner store probably doesn't need a whole lot of, CPAs can be fine. They don't need a whole lot of CFO. But if you want to have 20 corner stores by the time you're done, you need to be talking to a CFO pretty early in the game, right? It's about where you're going, not necessarily just recording the transactions every day, week, or year.
Okay. So that takes me to budgeting and forecasting, and which is probably a big part of what the CFO does, as you mentioned earlier. So how do you help your client build that out?
Sure. So there's two basic things that the CFO does, and one is financial planning and analysis, which is your budgeting, forecasting, et cetera, and the other is accounting. Right, your CPA can do the accounting as well. Mostly they call that bookkeeping. I call it accounting, so we only use accrual accounting. In the budgeting and forecasting kind of space, what you're really attempting to do is to write down in the language of numbers what your business is going to do. So it has to start with a base case assumption, right? What do you expect your business to do? If you tell me what you expect your business to do, we can type it into a spreadsheet and call it a budget. We drive some assumptions. We say, okay, what if we did, what if we hire a salesperson? Would we sell more? What cost would be associated with that? So we can start analyzing in that budget what we should do to pull the levers of growth, et cetera. But
Mhm.
basically, it's a spreadsheet that culminates in an income statement and a balance sheet, which are your financial statements, that just says what you're going to do. At the end of the day, you want to create that with your CFO, right? It's not something the CFO goes into a dark room and does with their green eye shade on. It's something it's a living document that you create together based on your knowledge of the business, your assumptions of what happens, and
Mhm.
you're going to roll that out and say, here's our roadmap to what we want to do. Now, I have one time in the history of the world, in fact, it was probably 1999, so it was a weird year. I printed out the profit and loss statement for the company that I was working at the time, and it was within $3,000 of the budgeted number for EBITDA one time.
Wow.
So it's going to be wrong, right? Your budget is not going to be right unless you have if you can give me the winning lotto numbers, that would be great because you have ESPN at that point. But it's going to be wrong. The question is, why is it wrong, or what variances exist? How close did you come to it? How much of your mission did you accomplish? Did you overshoot it, which is great? You're under budgeted. Those in kind of the magic of looking at the budget is actually comparing what you were supposed to do with what you did and seeing the results. Was the marketing not as effective? Was that salesperson that you assumed would bring in $1 million worth of sales, did they only bring $500,000, or did they knock it out of the park and need a bonus? Right? These are all operational questions that come out of just looking at the budget and managing the business. Hopefully that helped.
Yes, yes, yes. Because I mean, we all know that it's one thing on paper, but then it's another thing in the real world. You either under budget or over budget.
Hopefully you're under budget on expenses, and over budget and revenue is always the best, but yeah, that magic formula doesn't happen every day.
Now, and part of the forecasting, I'm sure you know, the I'm gonna call it to the left stuff, the unexpected expenses that come up. I'm sure that's budgeted in some kind of way as well. Correct?
Contingencies are always hard to spot. One of the especially insurable events, and a hurricane comes through Florida. That's one from my background being in Florida. You can't just put a hurricane on the books every year and say you're going to lose $1 million in hurricane, because that would be unreasonable for your budget. And when the hurricane didn't come, you'd have this budget windfall and never do get a bonus. But you really want to think about all the different ways in which your business could be impacted and try and budget for those. You definitely want to have the on the left things, as you call them, to be a small group, and you can notate them and explain them to your shareholders and stakeholders and say, this is why we didn't meet the budget, because there was a hurricane. That's pretty easy to do. You really do want to think about all of the things that could happen in your budget and try and put them in there, though. You want to make sure that you're covered in the eventuality that that prices increase or costs increase or sales increase to a different rate than you would have expected. Budgeting for inflation, for example, the last couple of years, right? If you put a number there for cost increases, you'd probably be wrong, but you might be wrong to a degree, right? If costs increase higher than expected, then you'd have a little bit of a negative variance, but you want to have something there. You can't just assume inflation is going to be 0 this year, because it's probably not.
Right, exactly. So it's a lot of speculating as well, in terms of budgeting and forecasting, because as we all know, we can't see the future. If we could, we all be in a different place. but
True.
but you try to get as close as possible based on what's happening now. What that's what I'm hearing.
There's an assumption set that goes behind it, right? So if you assume that, for the inflation example, if you assume that inflation is going to stay the same at 3 point something percent, then that's what you write, and you write that down, right? When inflation comes in less, then you can report a positive variance. If it comes in more, then you report a negative variance. But you state your assumption, and especially that's important as you get into larger stakeholders, somebody that's looking at and analyzing your statements, that's going to maybe look at your stock price and is going to future value your stock price based on those statements. As you get bigger, that's really important. It's less important when you're small, but it's still important to know we forecasted A and B happened. Why? What do we do about it? How do we react to that? If inflation drives your cost up 5%, then unless you have excess margin, which I don't know any company that would call it that, you probably want to adjust your prices somehow, or figure out how to alleviate another cost. Just figuring out how to keep your profit margin right where it should be.
Now, one of the things that's currently in the news is price gouging. I know you may not, or you may know, why are companies doing that? Because I'm sort of getting pissed off about it, because the containers are smaller, and then they're telling you it's doing more, and the price is higher.
Yes. And in big business, that's a dance between price and cost, right? If your costs increase 5%, you raise your prices 7%, and your wages might have to go up a little bit as well. So all your costs. But the point is that you try and keep your profit margin growing, and that's how your stock value, and that's how your company's value. People are excited by that. When that happens in too much of a spiral, you do have price gouging, or you have some price inflation that becomes very intolerable. The in economics, the Fed tries to regulate that and tell you to stop doing that by charging extra money on your corporate debt. But it's a blunt instrument and doesn't necessarily fine tune the idea of what that is in the marketplace. I think there is always you have to just watch your margins, though. So margins are the second of the big four numbers that we watch all the time. And so, as your costs increase, you have to figure out if there's something you can do to keep your margins and keep your profitability staying where it is in any size business. You can very quickly give away your profit, give away your earnings, your company's income, if you don't react to those cost increases. Hopefully, at some point, prices stabilize or go down, and therefore, you can offer cost reductions or something else to your clients. You can get back to the right profitability. Now, price gouging, I think, is something totally different, and when that's taking advantage of a situation where you're just taking money from people, right? You're taking advantage of the situation. The beer at the stadium, you can't bring in outside beer, so that's why it costs $25, and
Right.
But
that's a kind of a little different. We know when you go to events, a bottle of water is like what, $2.50, $3. I mean, that's kind of been like that for a while.
of course.
But in the marketplace now, it's like everybody seems to be hiking up the price and giving less.
It's some of the levers that business can pull, and I think my personal opinion is they pulled them in a little bit hard, so that's why we're feeling it now. If those goods and services are elastic, their sales are going to fall, right? Because people are going to choose the more value associated option. But if you have to have those things, we have to just go ahead and pay the price and figure out how to get through our budget. And it's the same for personal. It's the same for business.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's reacting to the market forces. If you can do without something, it sends a very clear message to the people that you bought it from in the past that the price was too high, and they either have to adjust it.
Yes.
Costco, my favorite coffee at Costco went up $5 during the pandemic, and I did notice that it went down $1 this last year. So Costco got the message that I bought less of it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I've had to contact a couple companies, because first of all, the bottle is small. I've been using the product for years, so I know how much the container yields in terms of before it's gone. And they made the bottle smaller. They put numbers on there. This is going to do 100 and something. And I'm thinking to myself, you must think I'm a real idiot. And I actually called them and said something about it, because I like the product, but don't play on my intelligence.
And hopefully they, if they get enough of those calls, they can adjust that.
Yeah, they
and
offered my
part of
money.
that's just marketing, like toilet paper math. I don't know how in the world they come up with toilet paper math of how many regular rolls it is, but this is where I think the CMO over there is making up stuff, and the CEO and the CFO are just figuring out how much the toilet paper costs and how much we can sell it for.
Absolutely. Wow, this has been great, John. So again, how do companies connect with you?
Well, so our website is ppsfinance.com. The PPS is for people, process, systems, because I believe those three things have to happen in that order for a successful company to function. our kind of discovery process, we realize there's probably about 33 million businesses out there that need our services. Nobody
Mhm.
really knows we exist. I've still never gotten a call that says, I woke up this morning and thought I need a fractional CFO, and could you help me? Really, what I do all day long is educate people that we exist,
Mhm.
what we do for their business, how we help, etc. So, I book a lot of discovery calls, and
Okay.
that's our process, right? We just we connect for 30 minutes to an hour and just talk about your business, figure out what it is you do, and then figure out how to help you with that. So I'd love to help all your businesses that need it. We like I said, growth oriented, especially if you want to do something interesting, it'd be great to talk, and I think it's worth a half hour or an hour of your time.
Absolutely, because a lot of times businesses don't know what they don't know, or they have this idea of what it is without really being educated about what it is. If you
Well,
know.
and that's an interesting idea with the CFOs as well, because the people that an entrepreneur has in their business from the beginning, when they don't know about a fractional CFO, are a CPA and or a bookkeeper, right? Bookkeeper is kind of paying bills and making sure that that things get recorded and the banks get balanced, and a CPA is primarily kind of worried about your taxes and how that affects your tax return, your tax liability,
Mhm.
um, all of that. So the CFO is definitely a different skill set than both of those things. And
Mhm.
I think it's really important. What I do all day long is educate people on what we do. And it has really nothing, very little, not nothing, but very little to do with tax. We certainly think about tax strategy and how to minimize, giving your hard-earned earnings to any government, whether it's state, local,
Right.
federal, et cetera. But really, it is starting with that accounting, starting with the budgeting that we were talking about before, talking about liquidity and figuring out any holes in liquidity that you might need to coverage for, looking at financing options, figuring out your treasury, improving your cash flow. Making sure you have efficient depository, looking at operational metrics about how your business is doing, improving your AR, pushing out your AP. We're really thinking about kind of higher level concepts than your CPA is worried about. So, um, you know, to me, that's the magic of being a CFO. It's way different than your CPA.
And it
Even
sounds
though
like it. I mean, my
even though
head
I
is
am a
already
CPA.
spinning thinking about all this different stuff. And once people get to a certain level of finance in their company, they definitely need to employ a CFO. After talking to you, it's a must.
I think it's key. Some of the work that I've been doing recently too is personally is the diligence work. So people considering buying businesses, looking at different opportunities, that business plan that when you buy a business comes with some risk as well. And you go into a room and you type it out because the SBA requires it to get your loan. But there's a benefit to putting some effort into that project and keeping a really nice budget and spreadsheet behind it so that you can actually make your business successful once you acquire it. Diligence during that process. Once you find something you like, entrepreneurs get a little bit blind to say, yeah, I want it and I don't care. I'm not going to look at it too closely because, I don't want to scuttle the deal. When you really do want somebody independent in there looking at that company and saying, is this a good value? Are you doing the right thing? Are there any
Mhm.
skeletons in the closet? Um, you know, is are the financials what they said they were in the information memorandum that you got, the SIM? Or are you going to get in there and be surprised day one that the receivables aren't there, the cash flow isn't there, your customer concentration was too high and you lost a big customer? There's a lot that goes into that. So looking from a finance perspective at all the different phases of business, from acquisition to growth to exit, I think it's great to have a strategic partner like a CFO on your side, no matter how big you are.
Yes. Wow. This has been amazing, John.
I'm glad you think so.
Yes, I learned a lot just in this conversation. So when I go back and listen to this, I'm probably going to sit down and take some notes, and really mull it over in my mind because I don't think a lot of companies, that are not that big think about this kind of thing. And when is the best time, really quickly, when is the best time when your company starts to earn X amount, should you definitely, no questions asked, get a CFO?
So I hate to give a number for that because it's kind of silly, right? You figure that a CFO is going to, even on a subscription basis, is going to cost you a few $1,000s a month, just in general, right? But
Okay.
CFO salaries for a full-time CFO is, uh, a lot more. um, and anybody that you could really get for kind of a discount, I'm just going to say, you should probably vet and make sure they actually have good CFO experience. You can
Mhm.
get a lot of people that call themselves a CFO, and they'll have a lower rate, than somebody with experience, because somebody with experience can earn a really decent living doing things for larger companies. Um, I work with companies that start in the $3 to $5 million range,
Okay.
up to 25, 50 million, because it seems very reasonable. And as long as their earnings are there, I know that we have volume, so that they don't feel the impact as much of the
Mm-hmm.
expense, and we have levers to grow.
Okay.
Um, if you're making $3,000 a month, I wouldn't give all of that money to a fractional CFO,
Right.
because it just doesn't make sense.
That's
But
right.
really, when you're earning enough money, that you feel like you should add that service to earn more, I would say is the key. And
Okay.
the final point on that is, a good CFO is always going to pay for themselves. It may not be an direct expense reduction. It may be in the idea they're going to help you grow or plan, or come out with a better valuation.
Hmm.
But my bent is always towards value, and so I
Yes.
know that we're going to provide more value than we're charging to every business. If I don't believe that, I can't take the engagement. Um, Sometimes it's very simple, right? One of the jobs I went into, there was an account when I first looked at the trial balance that said, discounts lost. It was $120,000. This company had
Mhm.
lost $120,000 through October of that year, and just recorded it as such. Um, we looked at it and looked at the process and figured out a way to not have those discounts lost, because really it was about timing of payables versus the receipt into their warehouses. The goods were taking
Mhm.
3 weeks coming from China, and the payments were due for discount very quickly. So we were able to put a system in place to recoup that and make sure that it was pretty easy to pay for ourselves that day. We saved $120,000 on day one. Um,
Wow.
but that's super low hanging fruit, and what we do really is more nuanced than that. We have to figure out, are there cost reductions that make sense. We wouldn't want to lose service as well.
Hmm.
B, are there ways we can grow the business? How can we help support the business to achieve more revenue, more growth, with the same expense structure, et cetera? So
Okay. Wow.
hopefully every CFO is going to pay for themselves, and it's just a matter of how much it takes out of your earnings that you may need. Like I said, I wouldn't give your first $3,000 to in a month to your CFO, but you should probably, if you're earning 10 a month, it might be good to start thinking about layering something in there.
Okay. Well, thank you, John. This has been definitely enlightening and educational. So you have accomplished so much in this short period of time. So, I understand more than what I understood before we talked. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share your expertise with us, because all of this is important. And business, you might not be there today, but you keep doing what you're doing, you will be there, and you will need a CFO.
CFOing is about the long haul. So, whereas we make a budget for the year, we make a roadmap for each year, and we might have, different goals every year. Every year that you do that makes your business better and more valuable. And so by the time
Mhm.
you're ready to exit or do something with it, give it to your children, if you have a financial partner with you along that journey, you're going to come out a lot better.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, John. We gotta do this again. This was definitely educational for sure. You've
It's
all
been a
guys,
pleasure.
you've all had a discovery session.
And thank you very much, Ida.
Thank you to our guests and you, our valued audience, for stopping by. We truly appreciate you. Many blessings to you and yours.